They didn't set come to watch the fight. They came to control the outcome. A mob boss sat across from Muhammad Ali and made a simple demand. Throw the fight. No cameras. No witnesses. No second chances. Ali knew saying no could cost him everything. His career, his safety, maybe even his life. But instead of arguing, instead of threatening back, Ali gave an answer so unshakable that the man who came to intimidate him left apologizing. This isn't set, a boxing story. It sets a lesson in power, courage, and character that still shakes the world today. When the mob boss made his demand, it didn't sound dramatic. It wasn't shouted. It was calm, casual, almost polite. That's how compromise usually arrives. Not as evil, but as reasonable. Ali could have justified it. One fight, one loss, one quiet deal. Plenty of champions had done worse and slept just fine. But Ali understood something deeper than money or fear. The moment you trade your values for comfort, you don't just lose a fight, you lose yourself. Because values aren't like trophies you can win back later. Once they're gone, everything that follows becomes negotiable. Truth becomes flexible. Lies become tools. And soon you don't recognize the man in the mirror. Ali didn't ask how much the mob boss was offering. He didn't ask who else was involved. He didn't ask how safe it would be. He asked a silent question only strong men ask. Can I live with who I become after this? That question ended the conversation. Ali had already sacrificed years of his career for what he believed in. He had lost titles, money, and public favor before, and survived. So when faced with corruption, he didn't panic. He remembered his identity. And that sips the lesson most people miss. When you know what you stand for, temptation loses its grip, fear loses its leverage, and no amount of money can buy a man who already owns his soul. Values don't protect you from loss. They protect you from becoming someone you can't respect. And in the long run, that's the only victory that lasts. The mob boss didn't come to talk. He came to dominate. His reputation did the shouting for him. Money, violence, influence, all of it was implied. That saps how false power operates. It needs fear to survive. Muhammad Ali recognized this immediately. So he did the one thing intimidation can't handle. He stayed calm. No raised voice. No angry posture. No attempt to prove toughness. Ali didn't try to overpower the mob boss, because he didn't need to. He understood that anyone who relies on threats is already insecure about their control. Real power is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand obedience. Ali's calm wasn't weakness. It was dominance of a higher kind. While the mob boss leaned on fear, Ali leaned on certainty. And certainty is terrifying to someone who thrives on control. The room shifted. Threats lost their weight. The pressure dissolved. Because when you refuse to be rattled, you take away the only weapon intimidation has. That saps the lesson. People who truly hold power don't need to scare you into compliance. They don't force loyalty. They don't bully agreement. They simply stand firm and let others realize their threats no longer work. Ali didn't defeat the mob boss with fists. He defeated him by refusing to play the game. And in that moment, the man who came to intimidate was the one who walked away unsettled. The mob boss didn't come to talk. He came to dominate. His reputation did the shouting for him. Money, violence, influence, all of it was implied. That saps how false power operates. It needs fear to survive. Muhammad Ali recognized this immediately. So he did the one thing intimidation can handle. He stayed calm. No raised voice. No angry posture. No attempt to prove toughness. Ali didn't try to overpower the mob boss. Because he didn't need to. He understood that anyone who relies on threats is already insecure about their control. Real power is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand obedience. Ali's calm wasn't weakness. It was dominance of a higher kind. While the mob boss leaned on fear, Ali leaned on certainty. And certainty is terrifying to someone who thrives on control. The room shifted. Threats lost their weight. The pressure dissolved. Because when you refuse to be rattled, you take away the only weapon intimidation has. That saps the lesson. People who truly hold power don't need to scare you into compliance. They don't force loyalty. They don't bully agreement. They simply stand firm and let others realize their threats no longer work. Ali didn't defeat the mob boss with fists. He defeated him by refusing to play the game. And in that moment, the man who came to intimidate was the one who walked away unsettled. Control only works on people who are uncertain about themselves. That's the truth behind every threat, every bribe, every attempt to intimidate. It preys on doubt, on fear of loss, on the quiet question in a man-sip's mind: what happens to me if I say no? The mob boss assumed Ali would hesitate, assumed he would calculate risk, assumed he would think about money, safety, reputation. But Ali didn't pause, because there was nothing to weigh. He already knew who he was. Muhammad Ali was sent just a fighter. He wasn't set just a champion. He wasn't set even just a public figure. He was a man who had already answered the hardest questions of identity long before that meeting ever happened. He knew what he believed. He knew what lines he would never cross. And most importantly, he knew what he could live without. That self-knowledge made him untouchable. The mob boss had leverage over fighters who needed approval, over men who feared being forgotten, over people who needed money to feel secure. But Ali had already walked away from titles. He had already stood alone while the world turned on him. He had already learned that survival doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from standing rooted in your principles. That's why the demand failed. You can't control someone who doesn't need what you're offering. You can't threaten someone who has already accepted loss. You can't manipulate someone whose identity isn't negotiable. Ali's refusal wasn't loud or dramatic, because it didn't come from defiance. It came from clarity. And clarity is terrifying to those who rely on control. The mob boss wasn't dealing with a man searching for himself. He was dealing with a man who had already found himself, and wasn't willing to abandon that truth for comfort or safety. This is the lesson most people overlook. The more you rely on external validation, the easier you are to control. The more you fear losing status, money, or approval, the more leverage others have over you. But when you know who you are, threats lose their grip, pressure loses its urgency, and manipulation collapses on itself. Ali didn't resist control by fighting it. He resisted it by being complete without it. And that's the kind of freedom no mob boss, no system, and no amount of power can ever take away. Corruption is comfortable in chaos. It thrives in gray areas, half-truths, and endless justifications. It expects negotiation. It expects loopholes. It expects hesitation. That's why the mob boss was prepared for arguments, but not for certainty. Ali didn't debate ethics. He didn't explain himself. He didn't try to sound righteous or superior. He simply knew what was right, and refused to step outside it. That kind of moral clarity is unsettling to corrupt people. Because corruption depends on confusion. It survives by convincing you that everyone does it, but it's just business, that this one time won't matter. Ali removed all of that with one quiet decision. There was no bargaining space, no angle to exploit, no weakness to lean on. And when corruption can't find a crack, it loses its footing. The mob boss realized something in that moment. He couldn't pull Ali into his world. Ali's refusal wasn't emotional. It was final. Not angry. Not defensive. Just immovable. That's what confused the room. Because moral clarity doesn't shout. It ends conversations. This is the lesson most people never learn. You don't defeat corruption by outsmarting it. You defeat it by refusing to participate. When your standards are clear, pressure has nowhere to land. When your principles are settled, temptation has nothing to negotiate with. Ali didn't expose the mob boss. He didn't threaten consequences. He simply stood outside the corrupt logic entirely. And that's why the man who came with influence and fear left with uncertainty. Corruption understands force. It understands deals, but it doesn't know what to do with someone who once compromised their truth. That's the quiet power of moral clarity. It doesn't fight darkness. It makes it irrelevant. The mob boss walked into the room believing respect was something he could demand. His name carried weight. His money opened doors. His reputation made people careful with their words. That's how positional power works. It forces obedience, not respect. Muhammad Ali didn't challenge that power. He didn't mock it. He didn't submit to it either. He simply stood on principle. And something unexpected happened. The atmosphere shifted. Because even people who live by intimidation can recognize something rare when they encounter it. A man who cannot be moved. Ali wasn't as impressed by status. He wasn't impressed by influence. He wasn't impressed by fear. He didn't speak down to the mob boss. He didn't speak up to him either. He spoke from himself. That's when the dynamic changed. True respect isn't given to the loudest voice in the room. It's given to the one who doesn't bend when bending would be easier. The mob boss had likely dealt with countless men who folded under pressure. Athletes who justified compromises. People who explained away their conscience for protection or profit. Ali was different. He didn't moralize. He didn't perform virtue. He didn't seek approval. He just refused, calmly, cleanly, without contempt. That kind of refusal does something powerful. It forces the other person to reassess who they're dealing with. Because respect isn't about who has leverage. It's about who has limits. Ali had clear boundaries. And boundaries command a level of respect fear never can. The mob boss could threaten consequences. He could offer incentives, but he couldn't cross that line. And when someone realizes they can't move you, something fundamental changes. The game they used to playing stops working. That's when intimidation quietly turns into acknowledgement. This is the lesson most people misunderstand. Chasing respect through status, wealth, or force only earns compliance. It creates silence, not admiration. But when you live by principle, especially under pressure, even those who disagree with you can't help but respect you. Ali didn't earn respect because he was a champion. He earned it because he was consistent. His values didn't shift with circumstance. His behavior didn't change based on who stood in front of him. And in that moment, the mob boss didn't see a fighter he could control. He saw a man he couldn't bend. That's why the tones softened. That's why the demand collapsed. That's why an apology became possible. Because respect doesn't come from who you are in power. It comes from who you are when power tests you. Not every victory comes with applause. Not every win is announced. Some victories happen quietly, the moment you choose what you will not do. Muhammad Ali didn't walk away from that encounter richer. He didn't gain protection. He didn't secure an advantage. What he walked away with was far more rare, a clean conscience. And that's something no opponent can take from you. Most people measure success by what they gain. Money, status, influence, security. But the truest measure of success is what you refuse to lose. Ali understood this better than most. He had already experienced the cost of standing by his beliefs. He had already watched doors close, titles disappear, and opportunities vanish, all because he refused to compromise who he was. So when the mob boss made his demand, Ali didn't see a threat to his career. He saw a test of his character. And character tests don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly, disguised as shortcuts. This was one of those moments. Ali could have said yes, and no one would have known. The public would have blamed an off night. Commentators would have created excuses. Life would have gone on. But Ali would have known. And that knowledge would have followed him far longer than any belt ever could. Because guilt doesn't fade with time. It waits. It surfaces in quiet moments. In reflection, in legacy. Ali chose the harder path, not because it was heroic, but because it was honest. And honesty is the foundation of peace. Walking away clean means you don't have to justify your past. You don't have to rewrite history to sleep at night. You don't have to defend decisions that betray your own values. Ali didn't need to convince the mob boss of anything. He needed to be able to look at himself the next morning. That's the victory most people never consider. Time has a way of exposing everything. Money disappears, power shifts, reputations change. But the truth remains untouched. Ali Sepp's fights are remembered. His titles are celebrated. But what truly endures are the moments when he refused to become smaller for the sake of convenience. This is the lesson that outlives all others. You don't win by taking every opportunity. You win by rejecting the ones that cost you your soul. Walking away clean doesn't always feel like victory in the moment. Sometimes it feels like loss, like sacrifice, like standing alone. But years later, when the noise fades and the world moves on, you realize something profound. You didn't just protect your reputation. You protected your future self. Ali's greatest victories weren't always fought under bright lights. Some were won in quiet rooms, with no witnesses, no cameras, and no reward. Just a man, his conscience, and a choice. And in the end, that choice mattered more than any fight he ever won. Muhammad Ali didn't win that night with punches. He won with principle. The mob boss walked in expecting fear. He walked out carrying respect. And that tells us something timeless. Real power isn't the ability to control others. It's the ability to refuse control. Ali walked away without money, without protection, without applause, but he walked away clean. And years later, when the noise faded and the world moved on, that quiet victory still stood. So the next time life offers you a shortcut that costs a piece of who you are, remember this: some fights aren't meant to be won in public. They're meant to be won in private, where your character is the only witness.